Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. We are down to the conference championship games. We have Doug Orth of FF today in with us again, 3 Tuesdays in a row to break down the playoff games, business points. Remember, this show will run through the off season, but if you're watching on RotoWire YouTube, basically we shift to baseball on that channel. So you're going to have to watch this show on either my Twitter, RotoWire Twitter, RotoWire Facebook, and this show will run 2 days a week in the off season. Also be doing a podcast on Mondays for the RotoWire. So you'll want to subscribe to the RotoWire Football Podcast, give you one of those a week. The Marathon, 58 analysts for Super Bowl 58. Doug Orth will be in that group. That marathon will run the week after the conference championship, so the week before Super Bowl. Chargie's in the house. Good morning. That Monday, February 5th, we'll be going at something like 10 to 4, 11 to 5 Eastern. And then Tuesday, it'll be evening hours. But again, we'll have a whole bunch of industry analysts in to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, a little bit about the season. You're not going to want to miss that. Finally, if you want a free trial at RotoWire, 2 days. We have all the sports. Any sport you love, we've got you covered. Baseball, I still say best on the planet. Go to rotowire.com/Jim. No credit card needed. 2 days behind the paywall. Check out what we got. Hopefully you like what you see. Doug Orth, tell everybody how you're doing today.
Jim, doing wonderful. Great week in football, and so that usually leads to having a great week personally, right? So, yeah, enjoy my day.
Before we start, there were 3 super competitive games. Well, 2 were crazy competitive. The other one, I still think the Bucs and the Lions was competitive. I enjoyed 3 of those games. Was there one big takeaway from the weekend you had?
Sure. Wow. Yeah. Not off the top of my head, other than, competitive. There was, I think things certainly went more script this week, right? I know a friend of mine asked me, any road team's going to win. This is obviously before the games. A friend of mine asked me if any road teams were going to win. I said, probably not, maybe KC. And that was, but I think the biggest takeaway maybe the success of the home teams, actually. We've had 2 road victories so far.
Yes.
No, I don't think that means home field is back in vogue again. I just think the teams that are playing better are winning. So, yeah, I'm interested to dig into this week, but yeah, I don't have any grand overriding takeaways from this week.
So we'll start out Chiefs Ravens. It's the early game, so we'll do that. It would be nice if that was the last game you like to save. What would seem to be, and you never know with football, that would seem to be the marquee game. But the networks and their deals, and certainly I'm sure Fox had it this year was for them to have the prime time-ish game. So whatever that is. So in this game, Chiefs are traveling. Now they've gotten a road playoff win under their belt, a big road playoff win. The Ravens, look, they were facing a Houston team that was a great story, but was very outmatched. The more the last week prep went on, we kind of saw that's kind of the way it is. This game, let's start out with the Chiefs side of the ball. The Ravens have done very well against opposing quarterbacks this year. They play a great zone defense under Mike McDonald. A lot of movement is after the snap. You don't know what look and coverage you're going to get until it's actually in motion. They can play any coverage they want. They can simulate pressures. They can make it look like they got 5 or 6 guys come in. They can drop people out. You don't know which are dropping. This is not an easy defense to handle. But I will say this. The Ravens almost always play some of the lightest boxes in the league. They invite you to run on them. They are going to beat you with their pass defense. And if you can somehow keep it close or play with the lead, you can run the ball effectively on them. And we've seen it. A number of teams have had 100-yard rushers. Before we get into the individual positions, what's your overall thought about the Ravens defense?
Yeah, I think you said it well there. The thing about Baltimore, and one thing I want to focus on initially here is you said that they'll give you one look and basically adjust it right after the snap. A lot of teams strive to do that. Baltimore just seems to do it really well. And the whole concept of simulated pressure, when I think of simulated pressure, especially this year, I think of the Ravens defense. Overriding, you stop me at any point. I might have a few things to say about each of the teams and each of the sides of the ball that we'll go through. But interestingly, Kansas City and Baltimore are two of the three teams that have allowed less than 5 net yards per pass attempt. This version of the Kansas City offense, as you already iterated, is not afraid to lean on the running game. Given Pacheco's success and the Ravens' desire to defend the pass at all costs, which I think this is what that is. It's more to defend the pass than just say we stink at giving up the run. And in today's NFL, that's the way to go, right? It might be in the Chiefs' best interest to continue to run the ball. And I've outlined 3 reasons why. One of the Chiefs' biggest problems for most of the year has been the play of their offensive tackles. That's going to probably be a big problem when it comes to Javon Clowney, who's having one of his best years, if not his best year. Number 2, it's still too early to know if Marlon Humphrey will return from his calf injury this week. But if he does, and he's up to snuff, he's going to be one of the better corners that Rashee Rice has faced. And I think that's going to be – that may not be a true shadow, but it will be more than the 50% of the time battle. And then number 3, unlike last week when it was pretty easy to predict that Travis Kelce was going to ball out against Buffalo's banged up linebackers and safeties, or defensive back, I should say, it seems unlikely that he's going to have near as much success against Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, and Kyle Hamilton.
So let's stick with the running game for a minute here. To end the regular season, the Ravens gave up 100 yards to a running back in 5 of their last 6 games. Yep. And so we have seen that trend is real. And Pacheco is now getting the minimum is 15 carries, but they'll run him into the 20s. And at this point of the season, you use him. It is what it is. And Edwards-Helaire might get a carry or 2, but they're going to get Pacheco the ball. And he doesn't have good vision as a runner, but he gets downhill very quickly, and he runs with a lot of authority. And so that allows him to take advantage of getting to the second level, getting the free yards. And there's no way the Ravens are changing their offensive approach here. They're not going to be loading up the box because they haven't done that all year. But with Patrick Mahomes, as soon as you do that, you risk Mahomes extending a play and beating you. And that's not who the Ravens have been. I don't think they see the Chiefs as having such a dominating running attack that they have to, to stop them to win. I think they're willing to take their chances here. Maybe it'll be a holding penalty. Maybe, set them back. Maybe they'll stop them on first down. Don't confuse Baltimore's success against Houston's rushing attack. We talked about this before that game. Devin Singletary is not a sustaining runner. He's a boomer bust runner. And it was exactly the script. I think he had 22 yards, 16 of them on 1 carry. And then like the other 8 carries, you're less than a yard per carry. That Houston rushing attack was one of the worst in the league. This team now, Joe Thuney, we're hoping he plays. He had an MRI done on his abdominal, I believe. But it seems like that's going to be important because they're going to need him here. That interior line is very good at run blocking. But all that said, do you agree with the idea that the Ravens are not changing their philosophy? They're not going to be walking a bunch of bodies down into the box to deal with Pacheco, or do you think otherwise?
No, I think that's exactly. I think you laid it out real well. I don't think they see Kansas City as having such a dominant running game or dominant offense for that matter, but especially just focus on what we're focusing on right now. Such a dominant running game that they have to change who they are. Why? Primarily because they have their own dominant running game. They're more than happy to run 40 times a game, and I mean that's almost what they averaged this year was 40 carries. So they're willing and able to play just about any type of game that you want to play. You mentioned Joe Thuney. I think it's going to be huge from the perspective of Justin Matabuke, who for our listeners out there. He's having a great year in the interior of the Baltimore defensive line. Playing at a high level, if Joe Thuney is anything less than he's got a straight pectoral, and if his upper body is struggling to push off on Matabuke, that could we know that interior pressure is what quarterbacks hate the most, and Mahomes is no different. So He can escape it better than most, but that doesn't mean he doesn't like it. That doesn't mean he likes it. So, Tooney's status. Hopefully, he's better than questionable. But if he's struggling at all, that could be a huge turning point.
Absolutely. Now, when the Ravens are defending receivers, they've had a number of receivers hit them up for yardage. Brandon Ayuk, $113. Cooper Kupp, 150. Keenan Allen took 14 catches to get to 106. Amari Cooper, 98. Amon-Ra St. Brown got just over 100, but he took 13 catches to get there. But one of the things a number of those players have in common is either they play in the slot. Ayuk doesn't play in there too much, but most of those guys, even Cooper, will move in this up. The other ones were slot heavy guys. Rashee Rice has played a lot of slot this year. And so there could be a bit of an advantage here. Now, he'll line up outside at times. And you mentioned Marlon Humphrey could be lined up with him if he's back from that calf injury, which could be a big deal. But what this defense in Baltimore has done, guys they've limited. Now, it was the game Joe Burrow knocked out. They held Jamar Chase at 2 for 12 and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill to 6 for 76. They held Deebo Samuel to 4 for 47. Not that Kelvin Ridley was any great shakes, but 5 for 39. And then DK Metcalf just had a 50-yard catch, and that was it against them. But again, those were players that were like the clear alphas. And again, a number of these players are ones that you go into a game plan saying we got to stop them to win. I think Rashee Rice, although he's putting up numbers, again, I don't think they're seeing him as this player as we have to sell out to stop him. And so I think he can pile up some numbers. I don't think he takes the game over with that safety play, but I think he could pile up some numbers. But I don't think it's a big game for him. And then the other receivers, really inconsequential. They're not getting many targets. Thoughts on the wide receiver matchups?
Yeah, I don't have anything really to add there. And this was something I was going to add later, but outside of it's the same story that we could have probably been saying for the Chiefs for the last half of the season. You have Rice, you have Kelsey, and then who else steps up? And more times than not, it's nobody. To his credit, Marquez Valdez-Scantling did have a couple big catches last week. Are we counting on that happening 2 weeks in a row? Yeah, right. I'm going to continue to support Kadarius Toney, but he's got to be active and on the field for more than 5 snaps. And I think the talent's still there. I don't know if his head is, but anyway, I'm not going to give more than 10 or 15 seconds to Kadarius Toney because I don't think he's going to be play a role in this game either. He's going to have to prove it for 3 or 4 games, and right now it's hard for him to even get on field enough for one. The
10 to 15 seconds you give him, maybe more than time that he sees on the field. All right, the tight end. Everybody wants to talk about this one with Travis Kelce. Now, Kelce's had 2 productive games in the playoffs so far. 7 for 71 in the opener, 5 for 75, and 2 touchdowns against the Bills. Only 6 targets. They didn't pass much in that game. That was why he didn't have the 10 targets he had in the wild card game. Easy explanation there. Now, the Ravens have not really shut down any big-time tight end. George Kittle went for $126. David Njoku, 6 for 58. I mean, it's not shutting him down. It was only 6 catches. And then he had 6 for 46 in the rematch. Trey McBride, it did take 10 catches for him to get to 95 and a touchdown, and it was garbage time in that game. Sam Laporta, 6 for 52. So they don't, other than Kittle, a tight end doesn't go off on them. And again, McBride had a ton of catches with garbage time. So they are equipped to handle tight ends well. Kelsey's playing a little better. There are some analysts, and I might agree with them. Maybe they put Kyle Hamilton on him and just say, you know what, let's take our chances there. But do you think it's good? I mean, do you think it's a priority for them to take out Kelce to make Mahomes win with everybody else? Or do you think they're just going to play it straight up and just kind of see where it falls? I think they're going to put attention on it. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 years ago, it would be more of a focus to either shut down or at least slow down Kelce. I personally would like to. I'm of the mind that you take away everybody's. If you can take away everybody's good weapons, the whole Belichick thing, right? Make them play left-handed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, personally, if I can dissuade Mahomes from throwing at him at all, I'm doing it. But I don't. That's not the way modern NFL defenses seem to work. They seem to be more of the as long as we tackle him after 5 yards, then we're good. And I don't think they're going to. I don't think it's certainly not going to be a true shadow, and I don't think that it's going to be okay. Hamilton man to man, everybody else out for yourselves. I think they will watch him. I think they'll try their best to tackle him as soon as he catches the ball, but I don't think it's going to be one of those things where he gets targeted 12 times and catches 3 passes because Kyle Hamilton's just dragged all over it.
And certainly, if they come out early and Kelsey gets hot, they certainly can make in-game adjustments. So they're always going to be cognizant of that as well. They could come in and just see how it goes. You have the opportunity to come out there because, again, it's not like Kelsey's back in the day where he's beating out 35-yard catches. This is not that version of Travis Kelsey. So overall, let's wrap this up for that side of the ball. What general level of success or lack of success do you see the Kansas City offense having against the Ravens defense? And maybe while you're addressing it, how many points do you think they could put up on this unit?
The biggest problem for Kansas City, as I see it, is the Chiefs don't have anyone else. And we've talked about this already. The Chiefs don't have anyone else who's proven they can make it play consistently in the passing game. I think there's a real possibility Mahomes fails to reach 200 yards passing if the game remains close. Can he do just enough as a runner to take some of the weight off the Checklist shoulders? We should know by now that you don't count out Mahomes, but this is one area where, and I'm referring back to Matabuke and Joe Tooney again. Tooney being healthy, this is one area where that makes a difference. So, I think Kelsey does some things. But I don't. As you talked about, I believe with Kittle, the only one I could see that did anything after the catch was Isaiah Likely. So, yeah, I don't see Rice. I see Rice being contained. I see Kelsey being contained. And if we assume that Kansas City runs about 60 plays, which is typically the normal expectation for an NFL offense, running roughly 60 plays. What do you do after 22 touches for Pacheco? I mean, maybe you have Mahomes with 8 to 10 carries. Okay, where's the other 30 plays going, and how productive are they? I don't see where they have enough contributing pieces to sustain offense in this one. You're asking me what I think for a point total. I think we're looking at what we're looking at most of the season. We'll remember Baltimore didn't give up an offensive touchdown last week. I'm not saying Kansas City will do that this week, but I think anything more than 17 to 20 points, especially when Baltimore doesn't give that up at home. So I think anything more than 17 to 20 points is asking a lot.
Those are exactly the numbers. I could settle on 17 or 20. I think 17 is more likely than 20. And I think they really have to scratch it out to get to 17. They might need help from their defense actually to get to that number. Maybe if they could flip a field or something like that. But I agree. I do not see a lot of points coming here. So let's go to the other side of the ball. So look, Lamar Jackson's had a wonderful season. His toughest matchups were his divisional matchups outside his division. They're real. And then the 49ers game, of course, was in there as well. That was an odd game in many ways, but he didn't face a lot of like high level defenses. I didn't think, obviously he played his divisional opponent. So there was that, but outside of that, I really still don't know what Jackson is. The offense is great. He's playing great. There's no reason to question. Hey, he played at a super high level. Playing the Chiefs defense is going to be a completely different animal. We'll start with the passing attack here. Steve Spagnuolo in the playoffs, dialing up hyper-specific game plans. I feel the secondary of the Chiefs is far better than the receiving group of the Ravens, and I don't think it's close. I think Spagnuolo is going to find numbers of ways to get pressure on Lamar Jackson and try to make him uncomfortable. Morning, Carla. And so when we're looking at this with the quarterback, with Lamar Jackson, can Spagnuolo come up with a blitz package to pressure the outside, to keep him in the pocket, let Chris Jones collapse inside, and try to make it where he can't get out and make it very difficult to find receivers with his lockdown secondary? So let's start with Lamar Jackson. How do you view Jackson in this game?
We talked about it earlier about Baltimore not really needing to change anything defensively. I don't think they need to really change much offensively either. I think the key to trying to contain him, and this is what I've seen other teams do this, is running. I don't want to get too specific, but cab blitzes or corner blitzes. You have to match Jackson's athleticism, and how do you do that? You don't do that with spying athletic defensive ends or athletic linebackers. You almost have to use cornerbacks in order to get him to his athletic equivalent. And so that, at the very least, is how you can control him from getting out on the edge. Now, is Chris Jones doing enough to push the pocket so they can get that interior pressure that I was talking about with Mahomes? But as far as Baltimore's game plan, I think we're looking at the usual 10 to 12 well picked out Jackson runs, and I think they're going to push 35 to 40 carries. And you're going to have about a third. You're going to look at a third for Jackson, a third for Hill, and a third for Edwards. Gus Edwards. Maybe Dalvin Cook gets a little bit more involved, but again, that's not something I'm going to count on until I actually see it.
So back to the running game where you're going right now. So let's make that natural segue over here. When teams commit to run the ball against the Chiefs, they are successful. We saw the 2 Raiders games. Josh Jacobs, 20 for $110. Zamir White, 22 for $145. You stay committed to the run. The game stays close, which in a lot of times the Chiefs anyway staying close. You're able to run on them. Even A.J. Dillon back in that Sunday night game, 18 for 73. DeAndre Swift, 12 for 76. Mostert in that first matchup, 12 for 85. Running backs have success on the Chiefs. It's just they don't see a lot of 20-carry games unless they're playing the Raiders. Now, last week, they had a great second-half answer for James Cook, who had a good start to the game, but it was a great defensive adjustment. All that said, I don't know that we have any opportunity for this Baltimore running attack to be slowed down. I don't think the Chiefs have the personnel to get after them. I don't know that they can make an adjustment the same way they made on the Bills. That offensive line, I believe, significantly better than Buffalo's in run blocking. The versatility in the run game with the RPO looks that Jackson can give you, it puts a lot of stress on the linebackers. Will the Chiefs have any answer for the rushing attack?
I don't think so. I don't know how Baltimore can look at the film from last week and say we need to change much from what Buffalo did. Buffalo ran 39 times, and they did so to great effect. I already touched on the fact that the Ravens had no issue running the ball. They led the league with 541 rush attempts during the course of the season. That feeds very well into their defense, keeps their defense fresh. It keeps Mahomes off the field. We talked about the strength of Kansas City defense being defending the pass. In the 5 games that mattered, the last 5 games that mattered, the Chiefs haven't allowed any more than 188 yards passing. Some of that's due to the fact that teams can run on them. Some of that's due to the fact that you defend pass well. And then the thing I should have mentioned when you asked about Jackson a couple minutes ago here, the Ravens' best bet at a big play at pretty much every drive is Jackson breaking contain against man coverage. Why is that important? Because the Chiefs play it at a higher level than most teams. So is Spagnuolo going to go zone blitz, or is he going to stick with his 30% man coverage and take chances? Lamar Jackson's going to break, contain, and run a middle.
So when you mentioned the man coverage, the Chiefs play about a 33% rate. That puts them really just behind Cleveland, the Cowboys, and maybe the Patriots, although their numbers slid off at the end of the season. So this, like you said, this is one of the heavier man coverage rates in the league. And I do think their defensive backs have a distinct advantage over Bateman, Beckham, and Zay Flowers. And depending where Flowers aligns, but if they're going to get L'Jarius Sneed on Zay Flowers, good night. Good night. I just don't even see an opportunity. And I don't know that any of these wide receivers are seeing more than 6 targets in this game, unless for some reason the Chiefs are able to get out to a lead, which I don't project to happen, and not a significant enough lead to abandon the run game. What do you see for the receivers here? Just the wide receivers, not the tight ends yet.
No, I got you. Receivers, I think this is a Snead shadow, kind of like you iterated. I don't know where Odell Beckham went. He had a nice little run there in the middle of the season. He's fallen off the face of the map as far as I'm concerned. And I know Harbaugh mentioned something about that this is about the time that he's ready to pick it up, and I didn't see it at the end of the season, certainly didn't see it last week. And then you said it, none of those ancillary options are getting 6 targets, and I keep waiting for Rashad Bateman to do more, and that's not happening as well. So if you take out Zay Flowers, and we'll get to the tight ends here in a second, but to me it's going to be tight end or bust, because I think Snead's going to take out Flowers.
So to the tight ends, my personal expectation, this is Tuesday, 11:30 Eastern. My expectation is Mark Andrews is a full go for this game. He had a full week of practices last week, wasn't quite ready. Another week, I have to think he's ready to play. I do think if he's ready to play, he is the Mark Andrews that we have seen in the past. Kansas City is good against tight ends. Held Hawkinson at 51 yards, Evan Ingram 6 for 57. They did get lit up our touchdown by Hunter Henry, but that was kind of weird. Otherwise, they're good against tight ends. But Andrews is still a great player in play action. Play action could be the thing that sets him loose here. With all the running that they're going to do, play action will be there. And Mark Andrews up the seam. That is something that is very weaponized heavily by this team. I don't know that Andrews goes off, but I do believe he could be, if he's healthy, the most productive receiver. If he doesn't play, likely can be productive, just not to Andrews' level. Thoughts on how the tight end matchup works out here?
Again, going to pretty much agree down the line. I don't have much to add other than the fact that with Andrews missing the better part of 2 months, I would be hard-pressed to believe, just like you said, we're not looking at domination here. I think we're looking at a solid contribution, but yeah, I'll stick by what I said. It's going to be tight end or bust, and the Chiefs have been good enough against tight ends, like you said. I don't expect a week changing performance from him, and I certainly would expect it from Likely, who is a great talent in his own right, but he's not Mark Andrews, who may not get there, and that's no fault of his own. Mark Andrews, right? Is a player, so. But yeah, I think he'll contribute, but I think we'll probably talk about some tight ends later who will do better.
So overall, what level of success do the Ravens have offensively, and how many points do you think they put up here?
Well, I was going to save this for when you ask how this one turns out, but in the last 7 home games that mattered, Baltimore has scored 34 points each time and averaged 38. They topped 300 total yards in every contest and exceeded 400 total yards 4 times. So I think they may not move the ball at will, but they will move the ball easily enough.
So who wins and why?
Yes. So I'll save the who till the end here. The Chiefs have had their trouble slowing down offenses committed to running the ball in large part because I don't think they have the horses up front to hold up. Defensively, the Ravens have made a handful of good offenses look average at best lately, including the 49ers, Dolphins, and Texans over the last month. And none of those 3 good offenses each reached 20 points. These are home games I'm talking about, right? I'm not going to be surprised if Kansas City keeps it close because, as we just have discussed before, Mahomes. But I think this is one Baltimore can win convincingly if it limits its mistakes. So I'm going to predict 34-17 Ravens.
And I can't argue with that in any way because when I broke it down, I'm like, all right, if they play 10 times in this venue, I think the Ravens win 7. But I'm not picking them. I'm picking the Chiefs. Look, Ravens win 7 out of 10. They are the better team. That 34-17 you have, could totally see it. And you may be like right on, it might be check, got it to the number. Steve Spagnuolo just keeps dominating my thoughts that this is playoff football. This team has won Super Bowls. The stage is never too big for them.
Mm-hmm.
Playoff experience. And it's not like they're not a talented team. They're a talented team with playoff experience. But Spagnuolo, he is going to outfox that offense at some point. Something is going to happen. And I'm again, the worst analysis of my career because it's not X's and O's. But I can't get past this, and I can't get past the idea that if there is one drive with the game on the line, that Mahomes does not find a way to do this because it's just been too many times it's happened. So I'm going Chiefs 1960. Your pick is smarter than mine. It's way smarter than mine. It makes a ton more sense. It's much more explainable. But playoff football, and I still look. I love Lamar Jackson. He has to show me he can win this game. He beat the Texans. Beautiful. I want to see him, and I want to see him do it here, and I'll never doubt him again. Right now, I do think that this could be a time where he has problems and he doesn't have the answers for them. Oh, it's tough to give this take. Anthony likes the favorites, but betting the dogs this week. I got you. And Carlos, yep, because you nice. That's awesome. All right. All right, so let's get to the next game. Man, it's tough, but like I said, 7 out of 10 times the Ravens win. So if you're betting with Doug, you're on it.
Jim,
any final words? Yes.
Jim, that's typical for Carla. She loves you, but she doesn't love me.
Well, I know she loves the Chiefs, so that was kind of, as soon as I predicted Chiefs, I saw something pop up on the screen. I'm like, oh, I know what this is. All right, Lions and 49ers. Hey, the Lions are an amazing story. They have built a culture there in 3 years. Dan Campbell, what an amazing job he has done with that group of men and just made them a championship level team. Doug, when I get into this game, I always say this: styles make fights. And when we break this game down, I have a lot of answers I'm going to get to because of the styles of these teams. We are going to start with the 49ers on offense here. And look, when we're looking at this Lions defense in the playoffs, they have gotten crushed. Baker Mayfield lights them. Now, I know there are 2 interceptions there, but Baker Mayfield flirted with 350, 3 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, I know a much better quarterback. He was like 360. Couple touchdowns, and they got tight in the red zone. Teams can move the ball at will through the air against this defense. And since we're going to talk about Brock Purdy here, that Lions pass rush, I believe they are much better at home. They feed on that surface. They feed on that crowd. They're going to be on grass. They're not going to be at home here. I really think that pass rush is very dependent on external factors because Aiden Hutchinson plays with a real motor. I just don't know how much there's going to be with that. So Brock Purdy, we come out of that last game, Doug, with the rain. Right now, the forecast is sunny. So that's going to be off the table. I really believe the small hands and the wet football and all that, very problematic for him. I just don't see a world, even if Debo misses this game, that Brock Purdy cannot carve this defense up. So before we get to specifically the receivers and the running backs, how do you see Purdy stacking up against this defense?
Except for when the 49ers are behind, Kyle Shanahan doesn't usually dial up a lot of pass plays. So, and I'm not sure that changes now unless the 49ers just struggle to run the ball from the outset. I don't know that that's going to happen. I think they'll struggle more than they usually do, but I don't think they're going to struggle to the point where Shanahan's going to go away from calling runs. We know that when Purdy throws in decent conditions, he's very sharp. So if Shanahan changes his stripes and calls a few more run plays, maybe I don't know that I want to necessarily see Purdy as a drop back passer that much. I still want him to run play action and base the passing game off of that. But there was no reason to believe that he's going to be much less successful than Matthew Stafford, or much less successful than certainly Baker Mayfield, who he's probably more on Mayfield's level than he is Stafford's as far as a pure passer. But the point being is, I think he'll be highly successful for the 30, 32, maybe 35 pass attempts that he makes. We might get into this a little bit later. Actually, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later. But some of the individual receiving lines that this defense has given up over the last 5 games will blow your mind. It probably won't blow your mind because you've done the research already, but will blow most of our viewers' minds as far as what they've given up. We'll get to that when we talk about the receiver.
So as you state, Brock Purdy is looking good here, but we're going to get to Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to go through this positional order.
Mm-hmm.
Christian McCaffrey. Now, Detroit is an outstanding run defense. And you mentioned it last week when you run behind Trent Williams all as well. The other sides of the line, not as much, but it's still fine. McCaffrey's McCaffrey. He's a superstar player.
Yep.
I know the 49ers are going to run the ball a lot here, but I really see them going in with a hyper-specific game plan, and McCaffrey could see one of his highest target games of the season. All week, when they're game planning, there's going to be a big circle on the tape for Jack Campbell. Real nice tackler. He can't cover. Even Derek Barnes with the interception the other day. He can't cover. Their whole linebacker core, they're not good in coverage. And Kyle Shanahan, one of those coaches that when he has mismatches in the middle of the field, he's going to put those linebackers in a blender and have easy opportunity. Christian McCaffrey, line him up in a slot, motion him out of the backfield, get him on those linebackers. I think instead of banging their head against the wall, they're going to run enough. But instead of banging their head against the wall, I think isolating McCaffrey on those linebackers is a complete mismatch. So McCaffrey, I think maybe he only runs for 75, 80 yards here, which is lower than he normally gets. Right. But I think he could catch 60 yards worth of passes in this game. What are your thoughts on McCaffrey here?
I just want to build off of that and say, I think you outlined it beautifully. Campbell, Barnes, whatever the Lions are trying to throw at him at the linebacker level, they're not going to stay with him as far as receivers being concerned. I'm sorry to jump ahead on this particular point. Interestingly, McCaffrey's season high in slot snaps is 12. That was a little bit surprising to me.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that. I could see them setting a season high this week.
Yep.
And not only for the linebacker coverage because we don't know about Debo, and if Debo is limited or out, I could see that getting close to 20. There's no reason for them not to utilize McCaffrey as often as possible as a receiver in this one. I could see him having hit one of his higher touch counts this year of the year, and just like you said, he might not run for about 60 or 70 yards. He might not carry the ball more than 15 times, but I can see this being a 10 target, and there's no reason for it. When the thing I like. One of the things I like to see most is McCaffrey running what's called a Texas route or an angle route, and they could wear that out this week if they wanted to.
And Kyle Shanahan might. He is willing to spam something when he knows it works. Now, you mentioned Debo Samuel, and look, critical injury, right? Odds are, if they make it to the Super Bowl with 2 more weeks, he's definitely playing there because he actually broke it the first time, I think, and then he only missed 2 weeks. So that the injury is apparently similar. But here's the thing. Samuel got injured in game last week against the Packers. You point out very astutely, and you made this connection without necessarily stating it succinctly this way, but the game plan, you outlined it. If they know they don't have Samuel, the game plan is created to add McCaffrey into a multi-layered role to step up for the potential loss of Samuel, and having the week to game plan that out. And believe me, they know right now if he's going to play. They know. They already know if he's going to play. They won't tell us. We won't know. But Shanahan knows. And so the game plan is being crafted around them. So we get to the receivers now. Look, if Debo plays, icing on the cake. Because if he plays, where does he run a lot of his routes? Middle of the field. They get him on linebackers. Slot corners, good luck with him. They'll run you over. You have no answer for him if he plays. But even if he doesn't play, I think with Brandon Ayuk, and look, I thought the Lions would bracket Mike Evans. He had been bracketed heavily in the last 7 games of the season. He did not do well. He was 70 yards or less in 6 of the last 7 games. Evans was running wide open all day long. If that's how they went in planning for Mike Evans with the outside corners they have, I don't see them having an answer for Brandon Ayuk. I don't see them saying, okay, well, we're going to do Brandon Ayuk, obviously a different player than Mike Evans, but super dangerous. And I don't think there's going to be any answer. And you talked about numbers that they've given up. They've got destroyed. Justin Jefferson, who I know, 192 and 141 yards. CD, 227. I know one of those is a busted play, 90-something yard touchdown. Yeah. But even outside of that, he crossed 100 yards. Adam Thielen went for $107, and he was playing. Keenan Allen, $175 and 2 touchdowns. Chris Olave, 119. 15 times they've given up at least 70 yards to receiver. But of those 15, 10 of those came after the week 9 bye. Oh, so that's not so. So as the season's gone on, they've gotten worse and worse in coverage. I don't see them having an answer for Ayuk. If Samuel plays, they're even screwed. But I don't even think they need Samuel because the game planning of McCaffrey. Thoughts on the wide receivers here?
Well, you stomped all over my individual yardage receiving totals that I was going to highlight so astutely. Damn it!
Oh.
But no, look, we talked about McCaffrey, and I think McCaffrey in some way, shape, or form inherits Deebo's role. And I mean, when I say inherit, I don't mean 100%. I mean like 50%, and then Jawan Jennings plays more of a role. But I thought last week was going to be a Deebo week, and it was playing out that way until he got hurt early. I think this week is just for the reasons you said. I think Ayuk's going to be needed, and it's going to be almost as much of a factor as McCaffrey. Detroit plays man coverage roughly a third of the time, can probably afford to do that schematically. We talked about a little bit more Jackson breaking contain against man coverage. Brock Purdy's not the same time as threat, obviously. So they can probably afford to play man coverage from that perspective. Fortunately for Ayuk, he is easily the preferred receiver in this offense when it comes to facing man coverage. So he's got that working for him. You mentioned before, he profiles, when I say profiles similarly to Justin Jefferson and CD Lamb, of course I'm not saying that he's there, but San Francisco doesn't need him to be Justin Jefferson or CD Lamb like Dallas' offense, like Minnesota's offense does. He can do similar things after the catch. I think to some degree he could be on their level if San Francisco needed him more often. With that said, over the last 5 contests, Lions, and you highlighted this too. Over the last 5 contests, the Lions have surrendered individual receiving totals of 141, 227, 192, 181, and 147. Now, as you mentioned, Jefferson and Lamb were responsible for 3 of those. The last 2 weeks, it's been Puka Nacua and Mike Evans. Point to be made is that all those guys I just mentioned are their team's clear top receivers. Ayuk is that for the Niners. Now, I thought Cameron Sutton, the Lions used Cameron Sutton, maybe not as a true shadow, but he was following Mike Evans most of the time. So whatever you want to define a true shadow as. I thought he would won his fair share of battles, but Evans got going after the first quarter, and Sutton didn't have an answer. It didn't seem like.
And good luck on Ayuk.
Yeah. And so I think Ayuk is at least in Evans' class. If we're not going to say he's Justin Jefferson, if we're not going to say he's CD Lamb, which production-wise he's not, but he's at least in he's at least in Evans' class. And with San Francisco presenting more of a run threat than the Bucs did, and the Bucs had success running, but with San Francisco presenting more of a run threat than the Bucs did, it's going to be harder for the Lions to give Sutton help, even if they want to give it to him. So, I see this as a huge blow-up spot for Ayuk.
And then, of course, again, if Deebo misses this game, that hurts. But they got George Kittle. Now, some people will look at fantasy numbers and say, well, you know what? The Lions have been really good against the tight end. Yeah, they have, but who have they played? Well, 2-star tight ends. Mark Andrews, 4 for 63. Not much, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
TJ Hawkinson, 4 for 58. Oh, wait, he left that game with an ACL injury or whatever. So he probably would have gone to 75, 80 yards in that game before it was over as well. And then, of course, we see it in the divisional round. Cade Otton, 5 for 65 and a touchdown on 8 targets. George Kittle will be able to do whatever he wants against this defense because, again, they can't sell out to stop him because you've got Ayuk, because you've got McCaffrey. And And when you line him up as a blocker, you can't dedicate extra people to him because if he stays in the block, you just lost a pass defender and you're going to get shredded that way. So it's a no-win. So really, as much as Kyle Shanahan wants to involve Kittle, and if Debo is out, Alex is in the house, that might really be a deal. Anthony real quickly points out Lions are playing 3 high safety a lot. You can't know CMC, right? Yeah. You can't do that with CMC, right? Rashad White, yes, totally could do that. But yeah, CMC, not so much. So George Kittle in this game.
Yeah, for as much as the look, I think that C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to have a big game for the Lions to have any chance of containing Kittle. It may not be the same mismatch as McCaffrey against Jack Campbell, against Derek Barnes, those type of guys. But I think the biggest obstacle in Kittle having a big game is Shanahan. It's how much he wants to involve in it. If he's of the mind that Debo's not playing, and I'm gonna call 30 passes and 24 of them are going to go to Ayuk and Kittle, then they're going to have, obviously, if you give anybody that kind of volume, they're going to have big games. But I mean, we're talking like gargantuan, monstrous type of games here. Yeah, amen to that. So, like I said, Kittle's involvement, Kittle's production is going to boil down to how much Shanahan believes that he's the mismatch he wants over McCaffrey in the passing game or Ayuk in the passing game. But San Francisco's offense is very centralized as it is, focusing on their primary 4 guys. And I don't know that Detroit has answers for any of them.
So overall, how much success does the 49ers offense have, and what kind of point total do you see them hitting here?
Yeah. Let's go point total here first. I think, well, I know what my final prediction is, so that's going to, I think low 30s is possible. I don't know they get there. I'm going to predict they get there, but I could see where they short circuit enough times to keep it in the low 20 or the high 20s. But I'm looking somewhere in the high 20s to low 30s with this one.
Yeah, as I look at this thing, Doug, and I mentioned earlier, Kyle Shanahan is a master play designer, and this is a team with linebacker issues, outside corner issues. He has so many levers he can pull. The Lions can only do so much of that pass rush, as I said earlier. They're not at home. They're not on the faster surface. They don't have that energy of the home crowd. Those things matter. And I don't think they're going to get enough of a consistent pass rush to make it a problem. And if they do get a pass rush going, oh, wait a minute, let's throw a screen to Christian McCaffrey. That'll slow him down. We saw Rashad White take a screen to the house, right? So if they want to blitz, God bless them. But all right, so my point with the score was this, similar to what you said. I just said it this way. It'd be a shock if the 49ers didn't hit 27 in this game. They run at the slowest pace in the league, so there's always that. They have to be really efficient on their plays because they don't run a lot of plays. You see a lot of games that run 50, 55 plays because they just are efficient. So there's a world where they don't go over that. But any normal game script, they are getting 30-something points in this game. If I'm betting this in a same-game parlay, I'm going to push that line down to 27 for the over-under to make sure I hit it. But I do think you can go over 30 in this one. All right, let's flip to the Lions side of the ball. And this is where I get to the styles that make fights. And the style that made fights on the other side was the linebacker and corner issues against the strengths of the 49ers. We have a similar problem for Jared Goff. Jared Goff has been a fantastic quarterback playing with Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator who figured out what works for Jared Goff. You get it out quick. You get it in the middle of the field. He's very good in the middle of the field. That's his strength. Even in that Packers game where the Packers had all that success in the rain, guess where they weren't throwing the ball? The middle of the field, because the 49ers take that away from you. Fred Warner and everybody. Fred Warner is like the genius in the middle of the field. Like he knows it's coming before it's coming, and he has speed, and they have safety play. They just dominate the middle of the field. And you have to beat them on the outsides. But then you got Charvarius Ward to deal with. So when you come in this game, Goff's going to have to throw to the outside to win in this game. And I call it, we got road golf right now. He's had a few good road games this year. I had Tampa Bay, I think, early in the year, he had a good game. Chargers, he had a good game. This is the 49ers. And we're going to harp on this a couple times. Their left guard, Jonah Jackson's out. He had knee surgery on Monday. And I'm pretty sure their center, Frank Ragnow, is going to play. He's got a couple of injuries. He'll be nowhere near 100%. Oh, wait a minute. Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave. But stunts, cross Nick Bosa, get into the middle. Or do it with Chase Young, cross over, stunt him into the middle. I think Jared Goff is going to be under a lot of pocket pressure, and I think he's going to have to win with Jamison Williams or Josh Reynolds because the middle of the field is not going to be there. Thoughts? Jared Goff. We'll talk about the individual players later.
Jim, I think you laid it out more beautifully than I can. So let me just go ahead and give you, because we're thinking along the same lines here. Goss, I looked up Goss production in a clean pocket versus under pressure last night. Here we go. Here are some numbers for you. Clean pocket, 75.6% completion percentage, 27-3 touchdown to interception ratio this year. You want to have a good guess on what his muddy pocket or what his under pressure numbers are?
I'm going to go with like 44% completion percentage.
Give him a little bit more credit, Jim. 51.4% and 6 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. We're not only talking about under pressure, Jared Goff. We're talking about him on the road. We're talking about him not under perfect conditions. His one saving grace in my mind is that you can't say he's running the same offense, but the same offense, the same kind of offense that allowed him to play in a Super Bowl a few years ago is essentially the one he's running right now. A lot of in-breaking stuff. That highlights what he can do, but for the reasons you've already said, Fred Warner, and you didn't really mention the safety play, but you don't attack San Francisco's defense over the middle of the field. I don't believe anyone ran more in-breaking routes this year than Detroit. So now you've got a situation where you're tempting fate by running into the 49ers defensive strength with your strength. So that's not to say you said styles make fights, which is right on point. Sometimes George Foreman can slug all day and get Muhammad Ali to fall. Sometimes your strength is better than the other person's strength. Whether or not, I'm sorry, I just lost more than half the audience by going Foreman and Ali here, but you know my point. Sometimes slugging away at a team that can slug is the way to get, is an effective way of handling it. What does Alex have to say here?
Oh, he's just pointing out the last matchup a few seasons ago, the 41-33 in Detroit is the first game of the season. It was on turf, and that's huge. The Lions' home road splits are huge. And Alex points out the Niners are 0-6 against the spread in their last 6 as home favorites, and the Lions are 6-1 as road dogs. So for covering the spread, which we'll get to that later, Alex, I think, is making a point there.
Yeah. So other than that, I highlighted under pressure Jared Goff, and we've already, I think, outlined the reasons why it's possible that Goff could struggle. So from a DFS perspective, from a betting perspective, I'm not expecting Goff to, certainly not expecting Goff to be the reason why Detroit wins. And I think he could very easily be the reason why they lose.
Now, for the running backs, last week, Aaron Jones was the first 100-yard rusher against the 49ers. He had a 53-yard run, second half, late third quarter, I believe, maybe an early fourth. I think it was late third. Either way, he had that big run, got over 100 yards. Now, the caveat is, though, running backs don't get 20 carries against them because the 49ers are usually winning. So there's that. James Conner had over 6 yards to carry. Joe Mixon had over 5 yards to carry. Jerome Ford had about 5 yards per carry against them. So it's not like you can run some on the 49ers. What I want to point out, I pointed this out last week. I'm going to repeat this. Eric Armstead is out the last 5 games of the regular season. Yeah. And that's huge for them because when they got Chase Young and they had all 4 of their linemen, the offensive line has a lot to worry about for them. And in the games where they had them healthy, linebackers, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, are freed up to do so much work because you don't have offensive linemen getting to the second level to crack them because you can't ignore those 4 linemen. And so therefore, with them having more room to roam, they can be a stronger run defense. Now, Aaron Jones got him last week. He is a superstar running back, but now we got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Personally, Doug, I think Jahmyr Gibbs, we're going to need some of that outside juice like Aaron Jones had. I think that's the way to get to him. I don't think Montgomery up the middle is a good bet for them. He'll get his carries because they need him in there to set the tone. But I really think if they're going to have an edge in this game, it's got to be Jahmyr Gibbs on the ground. I'm not expecting much in the receiving game because the 49ers linebackers are so fast. You'll get some catches, but you're not getting a lot of big catch yardage. Like, I think Aaron Jones has 3 catches for 6 yards in that game, but you're not going to get it there. But I think Gibbs has a little better of an edge, but they're going to have to really commit to him. What are your thoughts on the running backs in this matchup?
Yeah, I'll add on, and one of this is Eric Armstead influence, I believe. San Francisco has given up at least 100 yards rushing in 4 of its last 5. That's something that only happened 3 times in their first 13 games. I agree with you on they're going to need explosive plays, and one of the things that stuck out in my mind, and I'll tell you why I don't think it's going to happen again this week. But one of the things that stuck out in my mind last week was the success that the Green Bay's receivers had on blocking the edge. We saw. I think Wicks blocked Bosa one time, and then I think there was where Chase Young got blocked on these outside runs. They're going to have to run outside with some degree of effectiveness in order to have a sustaining running game. But I think it's going to be Gibbs. I don't think, as you know from this summer, Jim, I'm a Montgomery fan, but it was already going to be a hard sell for me to go with Montgomery against, with the line being healthy. Now you got Jonah Jackson and Frank Ragnow you got one of them unhealthy and the other one not playing. So
huge.
You're taking 2/3 of one of the better interior lines in the league, and you're saying, David Montgomery, we know we have you running between the tackles, have success against one of the best defensive lines. So it's going to have to be, to me, it's going to have to be outside runs. As far as Gibbs is concerned, I believe it's going to be more of a sustaining receiving game for him, not 4 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown. I think it's going to be more, maybe 6 catches, 32 yards, maybe get a couple first downs, and then that's how it builds from there. Maybe more catches, more yards, but it's like I said, it's going to be more of a sustaining where he's moving the chains as opposed to breaking off chunks because he's whipping Fred Warner or Dre Green on coverage. Because I don't think that's going to work. It's going to end up happening. So
the wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the elite slot receivers in the league. They played him outside more lately. We've seen it in the second half of the season. They'll play him outside more. They played him outside a bit last week too. Here's the problem. So in the middle, that's a horrible matchup. He's still an elite player, so he'll still get some damage done for sure. But if he goes to the outside, my mind says 90% certainty they're shadowing him with Charvarius Ward. And again, St. Brown could be okay in that, but I don't see him dominating. And I don't see him dominating in the middle of the field here. I think he has a fine game. I just don't think he could push them to where they need to go. We're not getting that 140-yard game with 2 touchdowns out of him, I don't think. So I think that's a problem. And he's going to get his targets, but again, it's going to be problematic. And then they're going to have to win with Josh Reynolds or they're going to win with Jameson Williams. And I think that'd be smart to take a deep shot early on a rundown to Jameson Williams to see what they could get. They can get a big play. That could be something that could work, but it's short term. That's not going to be sustained. And I don't think in this specific matchup, I don't think Josh Reynolds and Jameson Williams are consistently winning. So at the receiver position, we'll get to tight end later. St. Brown is going to have to overcome some really big obstacles and some really good attention from a great team that's set up perfectly to defend him. Thoughts on the receivers?
Yeah. Again, laid it out. I put this, I'm on a broken record. You laid it out very nicely, okay? He's proven he can get open against anyone. I found it interesting in research last night. He has run, I think, it's either too fewer slot snaps than outside snaps or vice versa, but it's almost close to 50-50 as you can with the slot usage versus the perimeter usage. It's like 555 and 557. It's something along those lines. I might be a little bit high on the numbers, but my point remains the same. He can get open against just about anyone. That in and of itself is important, makes him important in this game. The thing I want to focus on here, only CeeDee Lamb had more yards after the catch than he did. So, and against a defense like the Niners, getting the ball out quick and getting as many what I consider free yards is critical. Now, is that going to? Again, you said he's probably not going to have one of those typical Amon-Ra St. Brown games, and I would agree. I think the Niners tackled too well. I think they have too much talent in the back seven to expect 12 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I know that's on the high end for any receiver as it is, but this is a defense that held down CeeDee Lamb earlier in the season too. So, and then as far as the other receivers concerned, I think I've always been more of a Josh Reynolds fan than most, but asking him or Jameson Williams, you highlighted taking a deep shot early in the game would be a good way to go. I think taking multiple shots down the field it's going to be critical. How successful those are going to be, anyone's guess. And we've already talked about under pressure Goff and road Goff and all that other great stuff. How successful he's going to be at stretching the field is another story.
And Alex pointed out the mark is to be Ambry Thomas. He will be the mark. When they take their deep shots, they're going to get somebody isolated at him. But it's got to be Jameson Williams, though. I don't think you're really taking many deep shots. Josh Rosen's better in the intermediate area. But when you get Jameson Williams lined up on Ambry Thomas, yeah, that's a deep shot. That's when you want to take those. Because, like you said, you could get the PI, you could get the big play, and those could flip the game early. And they really need that to happen. Tight end. So Sam Laporte has been wonderful this year. His yardage has been all over the board. You know, he's had great games, had middling games, he's had poor yardage games. Earlier in the season against Tampa, I remember 11 targets, like a 4 for 36, top of my head, something like that. He has great games. Well, the 49ers, if tight ends get a lot of targets against them, they could do some damage. Like way back when Zach Ertz was playing, 10 targets, he got 6 for 53. Hockenson got 12 targets, he got 86 yards. McBride, 11 targets, 10 for $102. So if you get a lot of tight end targets, they can go off. But Darren Waller, when he played, 3 for 20 on 7. Evan Ingram, 4 for 12 on 7. David Njoku, 3 for 20. It was a rain game, but there was that, but 4 targets. So overall, though, we even saw the Packers are getting really good play out of their tight ends. There was nowhere for them to go. 6 catches, 23 yards. They did get a touchdown. Laporta's great. He's in a great situation. 49ers know he's their number 2. And they are supremely equipped to handle the tight end. I think Laporta, like St. Brown, I think he gets some counting stats. I think he gets some catches. Maybe if they get in the red zone, he could get a touchdown. I don't see him having a big game. Thoughts on Laporta?
Yeah, he has a chance to do well given his involvement and importance in the offense, but this week's going to be a tall order for him, and we didn't talk about his knee still bothering him, and right. that's going to come into play here, I believe. You mentioned this too. Only tight ends that had a lot of volume did reasonably well against San Francisco, and I got my wires crossed earlier when I mentioned Likely in the previous preview. He was the only tight end that faced the Niners that had really any success after the catch. It was one play for, I think he broke probably 20 yards of yak on that one. But
yes,
pretty much every tight end that faced San Francisco, they caught the ball and they went down. So and Laporta can do things after the catch. So and they faced enough. They faced enough good tight ends to think that's more of a certainty than it is just a fad or a trend. So, Laporta, just like you said, I think Laporta will get some counting stats, but this is not on Laporta. This is not set up to be a Laporta game at all.
So the quick narrative, what overall success or lack of do you see the Lions having? About how many points can they get up on the board?
Yeah. Forgive me for going a minute or two here. Offensively, the Lions are built to win anywhere because they can run. usually. They can run with power or speed, and sometimes both, or oftentimes both. I also think it's possible that they'll have success running on the 49ers just because, like I mentioned, 4 out of the last 5 teams did have some degree of success. The one factor that is hard to account for is one that we mentioned right off the top. Is this going to be the rare game that Goff can play well outside of the dome or something other than perfect conditions? I already highlighted his numbers. I'll go ahead and repeat them just for dramatic effect here. 75.6% completion percentage in a clean pocket, 27-3 touchdown interception ratio versus against under pressure, 51.4%, 6 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. You briefly touched on the playing conditions. Those seem to be in Detroit's favor right now. He's going to be under more pressure than probably any game in recent memory. I mentioned this before, there's a real possibility that Goff melts down in this game and this game gets out of hand. I'm not going to predict that, but I also don't think that he's going to play well enough for the Lions to win. So I'm going to conservatively say 31-21 San Francisco.
Oh, so we're right on the same mark with the prediction here. Look, if these teams play 10 times, remember the first game, I said that the Ravens would win 7 out of 10, but I picked the Chiefs. 49ers do win this 8 out of 10 in this environment, current state of the team, even if Debo doesn't play. And we said earlier, the styles make the fights. This is the worst matchup the Lions could have on offense and defense. This is a team, the 49ers, that are able to deal with their strengths and potentially take them away on offense and maximize the weaknesses and just go after them on the other side of the ball. It's a problem. And like you said, this could absolutely be a Jared Goff implosion game, because if they fall behind and they can't run the ball, which could happen here, and Jonah Jackson, as we said, is out, left guard, or knee surgery, and like I said, Frank Ragnow, multiple injuries, no way he's near 100%. Once that pass rush is coming and collapsing the pocket on Goff, it could get ugly in a hurry. I'm going 31-16. You went 31-20. I initially had it. I think I actually had it 31-20. And then I'm thinking to myself, I kind of dialed up the implosion factor a little bit more.
Yeah.
And because if they get the lead, the 49ers, it's a problem. So that's what we have. So again, Doug's picking the Ravens 34-17. You said on that one, was that correct?
Yes, 34-17. Yeah.
And I went 19-16. I think I went Chiefs on that one. 19-16 Chiefs. Doug goes 31-20 49ers. I go 31-16. Remember, if you want my notes on these games, it's pinned to my X profile. Just like and retweet that. Also, remember, we will be back on Monday. Well, Friday, actually. Friday, we'll be back doing prop bets for these games. And then Monday, we'll come back with Anthony Servino with a reaction to these games. You'll want to see that. The marathon, the week of the Super Bowl, Monday and Tuesday, we'll have 58 guests on for Super Bowl 58 to go over Super Bowl. Doug, tell everybody where they find you and your work, because I know you're doing writing on these games.
Yep, all my good stuff is at FF Today. You can find me on the X. I'm still having trouble transitioning from X to Twitter, or Twitter to X, but DOUGORTH. And my column called Road to the Super Bowl hits on Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon on FF Today. So please look for that. I'm sure I'll have some of the notes that I'll have some of the notes that we talked about here. And I'm looking forward to your notes. I'm going to come up with some more of my own. So believe me, I'll have about 2,000 or 3,000 words on these two games. Probably I might even push 4,000. So I'll have some decent insight for you, for everybody.
Yeah, definitely make sure you're following Doug. And remember, FF Today, set your calendar reminder for Thursday to make sure. What time does that article usually drop?
I would say it's pretty safe to be on 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, so set a late afternoon reminder on your calendar. Make sure you go to FF Today, check out Doug's article. Must read, get you ready closer to game time. For Doug Orth, I am Jim Coventry. Have a great day, everyone. I will be back on Friday.